friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today is going to be another episode in my series called Shelf Spotlight, where I pick a topic or an idea and find about 10 books on my shelves to go along with that topic. I have recently been inspired by Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and Lindsey from Lindsey's Little Library with their Book List Thursday. Very recently, they posted a video of great first lines. And I was inspired to go through some of my books that I've read and find some great first lines. I have 3 books here that are not part of my list of 10 that have kind of classic or well-known first lines. The Tale of Two Cities starts off, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." This is the only one of my video today that I haven't actually read. And I looked at this first sentence and it's much, much longer than that, but the famous part is, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." A lot of people also think of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, where she starts this one off, "I dreamed I went to Manderley again," I think is, let me find it. It says, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again." Manderley being the home that is a big part of this book. And then another classic, not classic, famous first line is The Martian by Andy Weir, which is a sci-fi novel about a man who gets lost on Mars, or left on Mars. And I'm not going to read it because it has a swear word in it, but I'm pretty much effed. That is the first line of this book, which kind of sets the tone for a little bit of humor, which is a big part of this book as well. Those are kind of 3 famous ones, but then I went through my shelves and tried to find some other books that I had read and like, what was the first line of these books? And did it capture my attention? And I picked 10 here that really did stand out to me. And as I went back and looked at them, I was like, yeah, that was really good. That was a really good first line. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite authors of all time since joining BookTube, and one of my favorite first lines, and that is Beartown by Frederick Brockman. This book starts off, "Late one evening toward the end of March, a teenager picked up a double-barreled shotgun, walked into the forest, put the gun to someone else's forehead, and pulled the trigger." This is the story of how we got there. Yeah, that is definitely a first line that caught my attention and definitely made me want to keep reading this book. I love Bachman. Another first line that's kind of interesting is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a young adult novel about World War II and a young girl who steals books, but this is narrated by Death. So we start off with Death speaking, and the first line, if I can get there, says, it's actually the first couple because it's just this little part right here. "First the colors, then the humans. That's how I usually see things, or at least how I try." I love the fact that this is narrated by Death. I find that very unique and interesting. It makes this book a little bit of a genre buster because it's not straight World War II historical fiction. There's also this element of Death speaking. I don't know what that makes it, but I just find it very interesting that Death is the narrator. I don't know of any other books where that is the case, so pretty cool and a nice way to kind of get you right from the beginning. The Light Between Oceans is a book that I absolutely loved a couple years ago. This is about a lighthouse keeper in this remote island off the coast of Australia and his wife. And they deal with some miscarriages, and then a boat washes up to shore with a dead man and a crying baby. This book starts off with, "On the day of the miracle, Isabel was kneeling at the cliff's edge, tending the small newly made driftwood cross." So we see there's a little bit of a grave site there, but also a miracle is coming. So that definitely was a hook for me and made me want to keep reading. One that I read earlier this year and really enjoyed was Kindred by Octavia Butler. She is one of the first, or the first, African-American woman writing science fiction. So I think that's fantastic, and this is sci-fi. It involves some time travel, and the first sentence of this says, "I lost an arm on my last trip home, my left arm." Yikes, what happened? How did she lose the arm? I need to know. Well, I do, because I read it, but I thought that was a great catchy first line. Pulls you right in. Sometimes first lines are pretty straightforward, starting to set the scene or introduce characters, but I like when the first line is a little bit different and leaves you wondering a little bit. Like this first line from the Night Circus, which is very simple and short. It just starts with, "The circus arrived without warning." Ha! It's very true. It did. But I love that it's very simple and straightforward, and yet why does it go without warning? Where does it go? How does it show up? How did it get there? Where is it going next? It kind of leaves you with questions and the desire to find out some answers, and I love that. Love, love, love. Then we have Jane Steele, which is a sort of retelling of Jane Eyre, where Jane Steele is a serial killer. And I love that twist on the book. I really enjoyed this one as well. And here's the first line of this one. "Of all my many murders, committed for love and for better reasons, the first was the most important." So there's no denial or hiding the fact that she has murdered quite a few people, but she seems to have the highest motives, right? Committed for love or better reasons. So yeah, I really enjoy that first line of this book, and I enjoy the cover. All right, then I have some middle grade because, you know, I can't help but have some middle grade. One of my favorite books since joining BookTube is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and this is kind of, I love this edition of it because it has a lot of pictures and these charcoal kind of drawings within it, and it gives it this dark, sort of creepy vibe, even though it's not really a dark, creepy book. The first line of this one says, "The monster showed up just after midnight, as they do." I mean, of course they do. Right after midnight, right? I feel like in middle grade books especially, you need to draw the reader in, and I like that even though this is a book that deals a lot with grief, there is a monster in it, and he shows up right after midnight. Makes me want to read even more. Pages & Co. has a lovely first sentence. This is a book about a young girl, Tilly, who is a book wanderer, and she is able to jump into some of the stories, and she spends a lot of time in her grandparents' bookshop, Pages & Co. And so we get a little taste of that in this first sentence. Matilda Pages pushed open the door of Pages & Co. and breathed in deeply, taking in the familiar scent of just blown out candles, dark chocolate, and of course, books. I mean, that just sounds lovely for this book reader, and I'm sure for many of you as well, to walk into a bookshop and to just smell the old books and the scent of candles and even the chocolate. Sounds like a perfect setting for a book that I want to read. Tuck Everlasting is a book that I had to read for a children's lit class a long time ago in college, and because it's still summer, I think this first line stood out to me. But it starts out with, "The first week of August hangs at the very top of summer, the top of the livelong year, like the highest seat of a Ferris wheel when it pauses in its turning." It just kind of hangs there, and it's hot and oppressive, and there's a little bit of a pause, and I like how that sets up. There's a theme of wheels and spinning and circular, like, time in this book, and it sets that up right from the first sentence, but also kind of gives you the feel of this summertime heat, and I really like that. Thought that was very good. Well, that's by Natalie Babbitt, in case you couldn't see that up there. There's a bit of a glare. And then one of my all-time favorite books is Anne of Green Gables by Ella Montgomery. This is my very well-loved mass market paperback. And the first sentence of this is this whole first paragraph. I am going to read it because it's lovely, and it really gives you a taste of Ella Montgomery's writing, and it introduces one of the characters who's very integral to the story. Yeah, I love it. Mrs. Rachel Lynde lived just where the Avonlea main road dipped down into a little hollow, fringed with alders and ladies' eardrops, and traversed by a brook that had its source away back in the woods of the old Cuthbert place. It was reputed to be an intricate, headlong brook in its earlier course through the woods, with dark secrets of pool and cascade, but by the time it reached the Lynde's Hollow, it was a quiet, well-conducted little stream, for not even a brook could run past Mrs. Rachel Lynde's door without due regard for decency and decorum. It probably was conscious that Mrs. Rachel was sitting at her window, keeping a sharp eye on everything that passed, from brooks and children up, and that if she noticed anything odd or out of place, she would never rest until she had ferreted out the whys and wherefores thereof. I just love this book. I love it. I love Ella Montgomery's writing. It's descriptive of nature, and yet there's an element of humor and an element of just sweetness, and it just makes me smile when I read it. So I had to include that, of course. So here are 10 books from my shelves and first lines that I really appreciate. I really enjoyed taking a gander through my shelves and looking at first lines and noticing things that stood out to me and what makes me want to read more. I would love to hear from you if you have a first line from a book that you really appreciate, that drew you right in. Let me know. Share that down in the comments, as well as anything else that you want to talk about. You guys know I love talking with you in the comments. And that's it for me today. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more shelf spotlights and books that are on my shelves, or anything else from me. And I will be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.